Hello! Welcome back to my workshop. Today we are taking a look at 3 modern ZX Spectrum boards using CPUs, processors, system on chip or single board computers, whatever you want to call them, that you might be familiar with if you are into emulation. So first of all we have the Raspberry Pi Zero, then we have the new Pico, which is just an amazing little processor, and last ESP32, and I'm sure that you're familiar with all 3 of those. There are many different ways that you can use these 3 chips to emulate Spectrums and other computers. I've chose the boards that have the same form factor, that are designed to fit into an original case, so that I could work on Mectrum versions. Link in the description to my shop if you are interested in the Mectrums. They are open for pre-sale again, and I'm looking to be set up to sell by the end of the month. And I am working on revisions for all 3 of the boards that I'm showing you today, as well as the Ringo. So let's get set up and take a look at these 3 modern Spectrum boards. These are the 3 boards that we're going to be looking at today. We have an ESP32 based, a Raspberry Pi Pico based, and a Raspberry Pi Zero based. All 3 of them are designed to fit into a rubber key or Spectrum Plus style case. They all have keyboard connectors. All 3 of them are designed to work with the original keyboard, including the Spectrum Plus, but I haven't tested a Spectrum Plus, so I'm not going to include that in my comparison. This is the first one that I brought. I've had this for a while. You may remember I did a live stream where I actually built and assembled this. So this one is a kit, or you can buy it fully assembled. I bought mine from ZXZERO in the UK. Let's have a quick look at their website. So ZXZERO, and these boards are made by Hermit Retro. So you'll see that we've got just the bare boards. We've got the version that comes with the boards and all the adapters and everything. That's what I brought. £75, and then fully assembled. Again, designed to fit inside a rubber key Spectrum case. So this one, if you was to buy it fully assembled, is by far the most expensive. We do have a Raspberry Pi Zero, so it is the most powerful. We have a proper USB input just there. Power comes in via a barrel jack, and it is 5 volt. Then we have an actual 9-pin joystick interface, which I think is fantastic. Micro SD card and a menu button. The HDMI is routed internally, so we come out of the Pi Zero and it's passed on to a header on the inside. So as far as the hardware goes, this one really I think is the best hardware wise, because it has everything. It has USB that's not a PS2 protocol, has a proper joystick interface, and it has the most powerful processor. When we come on to look at the software, you'll see that it has a lot more functionality than the others. This one does come with a diagnostic option, but we don't really have that many options for changing 2 things apart from options on how the joystick works. The ZXZERO takes the longest time to boot up, mainly because it's booting from an SD card. All the others boot from internal firmware, and it takes around about 15 seconds to get to the Spectrum prompt, so not too bad on the grand scheme of things. Now if we have a quick look at the video quality, I zoomed in, this is HDMI and it looks okay. I've got the USB keyboard plugged in, and I'll use the same USB keyboard for all of them, and I'm not going to be using a joystick just because we can't do that on all of them, so I thought that would be fair. ZXZERO, if we press the menu button, we get a menu as you would expect by pressing the menu button, and we can go through. So if we look at, just go through them in turn. If we go to open, we can go and browse the files that are on the SD card. I've tried to prepare files that are the same for all of them, and I have tweaked the file structures because of reasons that I'll explain as we test all the boards. So on here we can plug in a USB flash drive, but if we just go to the SD card, and then you'll instantly see that we've got 8x3 file name structure. If I go into Ultimate, so these are files that I've already prepared and I've shortened them to 8x3. If we go back to Snapshot, so now I've got a load of games that we've got on all of them, and we'll see how long it takes to actually access the files that are on the SD card. and it's about 20 seconds. We've loaded in, and you'll see that we've got folders of all the games A through to Z. You'll notice that all the file names have been truncated, and if you've downloaded the Spectrum ROM collection, which has got thousands of games in there, you'll know that they're all really long file names, loads of them are duplicated, and you really need to be able to see the long file names, otherwise it's pretty much impossible. And this is the only weakness of this system, no long file name support, and I've not been able to find anything that allows us to fix this. If you know how to change this on the ZXZERO so that we can use long file names, please let me know in the comments. It would make life so much easier. So I've prepared a few things that we can test. I think I put it in Ultimate. Let's go back, go to Ultimate, and we've got a brand new game called Ringo, which you can download for free from itch. I'll put a link in the description. You'll notice there that it instantly loaded the tap file. We didn't have to wait around. So there we go, we've got music coming through on the video capture device. Unfortunately, I can't hear it while we're playing the games. Ringo looks absolutely fantastic. I love what they did with the colours, and they did some really clever stuff. So grab the key to open the door. Now we can go back and we can go through the door. So let's press the menu, and we can just press the menu button again and go back. If we go into options, we can change the speed of the emulator. I accidentally set that to 1000%, which is crazy. If we go into media, we've got loads of options for auto loading and detecting and fast loaders, accelerated loaders. So we should be able to turn that off so that we load tape in at the same length as a tape would normally take. If we go into joysticks, we can choose the type of joystick. We can have multiple buttons if we're using a USB. Oh, okay, so that can also be a custom keyboard layout that we can choose. We've got loads of filters, so loads of options for changing the way that it looks. If we go into our machine and go to select, the ZXZERO has the most number of types of spectrums that can be emulated. So you can see we can do +2, +2A, +3, Timex, pentagons. We can also do peeks and pokes and browse the memory. We can do a reset. So software-wise, the ZXZERO is definitely the most powerful, but it's let down by the long file names. Futurely here, so I feel I need to make a comment about some of the facts that I might have mentioned. The issue with the file names is purely down to the Fuse emulation system, and it's nothing to do with ZX Renew or Hermit Retro. They just made the hardware and sell it. I have raised the issue, and it is on the list of things that could be looked at. It's just a matter of doing a software update. So let's get set up and look at another one. So this is the ES Spectrum, and this is by Antonio. If you have a quick look on his website, he's based in Spain. These are €39. You do have options to buy with the board, with a rubber key case, and with a joystick adapter, which we'll talk about in a second. And I believe that there are some other boards as well, which are like the dev boards, which you can buy for about £20 on AliExpress. And they've just got the breakout ports, and it's very basic. So this is using the very popular ESP32 board. Again, we've got breakouts for the basic Spectrum keyboards. This one has a power switch, which I thought was a nice feature. We have a micro SD. Then we've got what look like USB ports. We have an input and an output, and VGA. So this board is looks the most simple out of all of them. So let's quickly talk about the USB ports, but they're not actually USB ports. They're USB physically, but the protocols that they use are actually PS2. So you need a keyboard like this, the PICO, but you need the one that supports PS2 protocol over USB. I've got this board because I previously had one of his other FPGA Spectrum boards, and they only work with the PS2 protocol. So you'll notice that there's two ports. So we do have one for a keyboard, and one that can work with a PS2 joystick. If you buy one of these boards, I recommend that you buy the joystick adapter from Antonio. I didn't, because I didn't know about that. I just thought that these were USB ports, because I assumed. Future Lee here again, and I need to point out that the PS2 on the USB ports is purely down to the ESP-based firmware and the original dev board that was used. I asked Antonio, and he said the reason that he put the USB ports on the back was so that they would fit into the expansion port and didn't need any modification to the case. If he'd put the PS2 ports like the original dev board had, then it would need modifying on the case. Boot up time is pretty much instant, and VGA output is a decent, good quality. Let's have a look at the ES Spectrum. We're now capturing via VGA. So it looks pretty much the same. But this time we do not have a menu button on the board. We have to use the function keys. If you're using the original Spectrum, you can use key combinations to get to the same. So F1 brings up the menu. If you press F2, we can go straight into snapshots. If we press F5, we can load tap files. So let's press F1 and look through the menu. So we've got snapshots, which we can load, tape, which we can load. It does have like disk drive options as well. I've not really touched that, but because we don't have that on all of them, I won't really go into it. So options on storage, flash load. So I think that means that we can instantly load from tape. We've got only 3 options for the type of Spectrum that we can emulate. We can change the aspect ratio. We can change the joysticks, but again, these have to be joysticks that are on the PS2 DB9 converter. So we can't really we can't just plug anything into it, but we can use the cursor keys as a joystick. We can change the language. This was designed in Spain, so it's no wonder that it's got English and Spanish. We've got options for timing, and we can do a firmware update. So let's do Ringo. So on the ES Spectrum, we have to organize everything into folders. Tapes go into T and snapshots go into S. So we'll load Ringo. And again, you'll see that it instantly starts. Okay, so we've only got mono audio, but we do have it. So I am just using the keyboard and space is fire. So if we go back to our menu, go to our options, machine, you'll see that there's no options to change the speed like we can on the ZXZERO. We can save a snapshot. So once we get into it, everything is good. This one, if we look in the snapshot folder, so again, I've got the same folders on here, the 0 to 9 with all the games on there. See how long it takes. So on this one, it does have a file which contains all the names of all the games that's in here. So it does mean that it loads in a lot quicker. If we go into just pick a folder, 0 to 9. they do take a little bit of time to get into these folders. So as we look down here, you'll see that the long file name support is actually quite a bit better than the ZXZERO. This one I think is 23 plus 3. So you'll see I went through and I did try to rename a lot of them that were a bit too long. But we've got a mixture of normal names and then truncated names. In order for this one to work best, you would need to go through and process all the files and just truncate anything that's over 23. I have been trying to find a way to do this automatically and then also remove all of the multiple copies of the files that you get on there. So I've been testing with 180. So that loads reasonably quick. Tune up. Okay, so let's go back to our menu and let's go into the options. Let's try that. Let's just see if that option means that tapes load at normal speed. So we'll do a F1, reset, soft reset. We could have pressed, no, let's do a F11. Okay, so let's go on to tape loader. We'll press F5 and we'll do Ringo. So we select it from the tape and then it's F5 and F6, right, okay. So we can do a normal full tape load. I'm going to reset that. Let's go back to there, tape, options, storage, flash load, yes, escape, 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 tape loader, F5, Ringo, and you'll see that it instantly loads it in if you don't want to wait. So that's the ES Spectrum. This one is let down by the joysticks. Everything else is pretty good. The software is pretty good. The long file name support is better than the ZXZERO. So let's have a look at the last one, which is the Pico. So this is the PICOZXPI that I brought from Curtis Electronics on eBay. He makes this particular one. I really think he did a grand job with his design. If we look at the GitHub for the PICO Spectrum project, that's called Fruit Bat. And this is where loads of boards have all sprung up from. If we have a quick look, we can see all of the specs and all the details, but all the boards are slightly different, but using the same core. So as we can see here, we've got boards that fit in the original 48K, much like the one I've got. And then we've got these little handhelds with screens or just basic PCBs with keyboards on. And then we've got these off-the-shelf Pico boards, Pico DV and Pico Demo. They're very cheap and they come with all the connections that you need to get a basic system going. I won't go into all of those other details, but if you want a cheaper alternative to the board that I've got, then there are loads of options out there for you. So if we take a closer look at this particular board, I really like some of the features that we've got on here. As you will see, all of the I/O has been broken out. We've got headers for the keyboard, got headers for the menus and joystick, headers for the SD card, headers for the USB ports, video out, speaker. Everything is broken out so that you could basically tweak the board to do what you want. I think that is such a neat idea, and not many people go to those extra lengths. The board itself is very simple. Everything is just breaking out of the Pico. We do have an audio amplifier, we have a volume control and a built-in speaker. I thought that was another very neat feature. This one is only audio out, so I'm pretty sure on this particular board we don't have the option to connect a tape in, but it could be that the other versions do have that. We've got a full-size SD card, VGA out, keyboard connections for a 48K keyboard, an actual USB port which can be used with USB anything, so keyboards and joypads, and we have a mini USB for power in with a power LED. The button on the back can be changed between reset and menu with some jumpers. This is a brand new board that was sent to me because we had some issues with VGA output on my old monitor. So this is the first board, and although it's a different colour, all of the options are pretty much the same, but with the difference has come to the video output. So on this board, it was originally set up for composite sync, which is what all new monitors use. But if we go back, older monitors, older VGA monitors, they needed horizontal and vertical sync. Because of the way that the video works on the Pico, it doesn't have a frame buffer, it doesn't have enough memory. So the video, the VGA output is what is called bit banged. So basically the programming, the emulation is bit banging, setting the video output on the fly as it's processing, rather than filling a buffer and then dumping that to a video processor of some sort. The way that the firmware was set up is determined by the kind of video output that you've got. You can also have many options for the way that it generates the brightness and the colors, and that determines how many pins are used. So on my first one, we had to do some modding to try various different things to get it working on my old LG monitor, the one that you see in the workshop all the time. So you'll see that there's a red bodge wire just there, and another green one, and a trace that I cut. So to get the extra horizontal pin, because we only need one pin to do composite sync, but we need 2 spare pins to do horizontal and vertical sync, and all the pins we used, Curtis did some tweaks and rearranged a few things. So we changed the speaker output, and we managed to get composite sync coming out and changed the audio to a different location. Curtis changed the firmware specifically to work with horizontal and vertical sync. And we did lots of testing, and I eventually got it to work on one of my LG monitors, and then it also worked on the various VGA to HDMI adapters that I've got and Curtis has got. And then Curtis did lots more testing and refined it. That was very much a work in progress. So now we've got this whiteboard, we've got some more jumpers here. We can chop and change between the composite sync and the horizontal and vertical sync by just changing the jumpers. Again, excellent work on the side of Curtis, and I really appreciated all the help that he gave me. This one boots up just as quick as the ES Spectrum, and again, the VGA output looks really good on my old monitor. This one does have a menu button, but we can also use the function keys on a full-size keyboard. So F1 brings up the menu, press escape, F12 does a reset to 128K mode, F11 resets to 48K mode. If we press F1 again, we can do quick saves, snapshots, tapes. We can change the CPU speed, but it's not about performance, it's more about timing. So we've got options for 3.5, 4, and unmoderated. Some of the timings can be a bit strange because they were made for 50 Hz, and VGA is 60. So they designed it in to run at 4 MHz to get around some of the timing issues, and then unmoderated will run as fast as it can. We can change the audio, we can choose the joystick between Kempston and Sinclair, and what we reset to. So let's just do the snapshot so that we can look at how the file structures work. So again, I've got all the folders in here just like we had before. We go into 0 to 9. You'll see how quickly they are loading because it's cached all of the games that's on there into a file. And you'll also see that it supports the full long file names. There are no truncated files like we saw on the ESP and especially on the ZXZERO. So let's just load in 180 because we've used that for testing before. So now we've got audio actually on the onboard speaker as well as coming out the headphone jack. So something that I've just found which is really neat, if we press F9, we can just quickly zip through the snapshots. We just go backwards and forwards. Thought that was really, really cool. Let's go back to 128K mode. Let's go back to our main menu. So I haven't been able to find any options that change the way that the tapes work. So we need to, let's go into tape player, F1, select our tape, find Ringo, press escape, and now it will start to load the tape, but we have to just let it load as if it was loading from an actual tape player. I haven't found a way to make it turbo load. So we'll let this load in and then we'll come back. Okay, our tape has loaded and let's press a key. And unfortunately, we have some issues. I'm just going to go back in, change our CPU speed to 4 megahertz. And it just isn't able to cope with the new fancy techniques that they're using in the Ringo game. I'm going to turn that down. And it's just pushing the emulator, the bit banging, just too hard. It does actually play, it's just the timing is being thrown out. So let's just do unmoderated, and it doesn't really help. So that is one issue with the Pico. The way that the bit banging works, some of these newer games could be thrown off, but I haven't found any older games that have any issues. I did choose Ringo specifically to test because it was doing some really advanced fancy stuff. But the advantage of using these system on chip or single board computers is it's just firmware. Futurely here one more time, and I've been talking to the FruitBite developers, and they do think that the way that the Pico works, it might not be possible to get Ringo working because they really did do some fancy stuff. So we might have to wait a long time for that one. But the rest of the system is fantastic. If you're just playing the older games, you'll have no trouble with it whatsoever. So there we go. I can't really say that we have a clear winner, but my personal favorite is the Pico, just because of the board itself and how well he designed it with all of the options that you can plug in. Everything is broken out onto the headers. Much more of a DIY enthusiast board. The PICOZXPI is definitely the most powerful and emulates the most Spectrums. It has the proper joystick interface, HDMI output, but it's let down by the short file names. The ESP32 is definitely the cheapest of the bunch, and it does a good job, but that one is let down by the lack of USB, that's actual USB, and also no joystick port. So you are having to buy a special adapter to use an old joystick, and you can't use USB joysticks on them. It's such a shame because that one also works really well and it's such a good value. So thank you for taking a look. I hope that you found that interesting, and you may have different opinions on what's important, but if you've ever tried browsing a list of 5,000 Spectrum games with the long file names that you get from those ROM dumps, it's impossible if the emulator doesn't support long file names. That really is the negative on the ZXZERO, but it's such a big negative in my opinion. But anyway, that's it. I'm rambling. Thanks and see you soon. Bye-bye.